Holy shit, I did not expect to enjoy this game this much. It really came as a surprise. When I saw the first trailer for Clair Obscur, I wasn't really sure what to think about the game. It looked like a Western Persona lookalike with a neat story hook that might turn out incredibly stupid. Well, it only took me an hour to completely fall in love with the game. And every additional hour just made me appreciate it more and more. The game is amazing. And it is another example of games not needing an overblown budget and the same old safe design principles to go for mass appeal that the market is oversaturated with. And that they certainly don't need to cost $70 or even $90 when we go by Nintendo's standard. This is a solid AA and then some. This year is a throwback to the 6th and maybe 7th generation mid-budget games, where a bit of polish got traded for innovative mechanics and a unique experience. Games that took risks and offered something special. And the asking price reflected that. Those games had their issues. They weren't the most graphically impressive. More often than not, they were clunky and janky, but they were well worth it. Especially since you had to pay only about 2/3 of what a premium release would cost. And that's exactly what Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is. A game with some noticeable issues, which are offset by the sheer creativity on display here, both in terms of mechanics as well as concepts, visuals, even music. And it only costs $45, $50 if you are unlucky, not accounting for silly countries like Australia. But what is so great about this game? Well, let's start with the most obvious, the visual design. Doesn't this look stunning? Or this? Or this? The devs created so many unique and detail-rich environments. They put so much care into those. With the red and white petals littering the streets of the town of Lumiere, the blue forest around the indigo tree, the minefield and the coral-covered ruins in the flying waters, the red woods surrounding the hidden Gastral village, the cliffs looming over a destroyed world. And so much more. And all these places are littered with the remnants of civilization, full of things you wouldn't normally expect, and with even more clutter and the ruins of former cities floating over them. Every location is a graveyard for misplaced and forgotten things. There is no real rhyme or reason for most of the stuff you find and see. Well, that's not completely true. Many things are actually explained through the story and the lore, hidden in collectible journal entries or optional conversations. But much of the environmental randomness and chaos is mostly just there for the sake of looking expressionistic, both in and out of game. Because this world we're traversing has been created or at least heavily altered by the Paintress, the main antagonist of the story. She appeared about 70 years ago, tore the world asunder and painted a giant number on a monolith, visible from across the sea. And now she lies dormant most of the time, but every year she rises, erases the number on the monolith and paints a new one, counting down. And every person who reached the age mirroring that number just vanishes, in a hauntingly beautiful scene. So now every year a so-called expedition sets out to reach the distant continent, conquer its mystical lands and bring down the Paintress, to secure the future of coming generations. Without success so far. So now it's the titular Expedition 33's turn, mostly comprised of 32-year-olds in their last year before their own gommage, as the game calls it. And this already brings up some existential horror. Not only is there a countdown to humanity's inevitable demise, humans most likely go extinct long before the countdown reaches zero. Already people aren't growing old anymore, no one's older than 32. People are dying younger and younger each year. At some point, all the adults are just gone, which will lead to a few years of Lord of the Flies. And even if humanity survives this, at some point there aren't even any more kids around old enough to be able to care for the others. And then the rest of the few young children who have been born before the last sexually mature teenagers got turned into flower petals just starves to death. So I guess year 10 or so would be the last one before there are no more people left. Which makes it so much worse than how it appears at first. Now, there are a few unanswered questions, so far at least. What happened to the people who will turn 33 at a later date? There's this big farewell celebration every year when the Paintress awakens and changes the number on the monolith. and all the people about to be erased gather at the harbor, dressed in flower necklaces, and sent off by their loved ones. But what happens the day after, to the guy who then turns 33? Is there another celebration, maybe a smaller one, at a community center? The story presents some really intriguing twists and turns, but it leaves some holes here and there. From how it looks when we traverse the lands of the Paintress and uncover our predecessors' journals, all the previous expeditions have been wiped out. But we have protocols, no of reassembly points, no certain routes through the continent. How? Maybe some expeditions did return, unsuccessful, and reported their findings, but so far none of it has been stated. It's left open and I can't tell if that's on purpose or if it wasn't entirely thought through. The story is presented rather fragmented, and the ones in the know withhold information in a bit of an artificial manner, though not less intriguing or entirely unbelievable. It works in many ways in the game's favor. This is a ruined world inhabited mostly by monsters, so how many expository scenes can we actually expect? And those who know the whole truth are on the enemy's side, so of course they don't just explain everything to us. Who even is the Paintress? Where did she come from? What's her motivation or her goal? Even within enemy territory you will find friendly creatures and even monsters created by the Paintress ready to talk to you. And then slowly, bit by bit, you get more insight into the Paintress's character. Maybe there's more to the Paintress that we just don't understand at this point, which wouldn't be surprising given how many stories unfold. Or maybe the Paintress isn't actually the enemy, but other forces yet to be uncovered. A lot of the mysteries will get untangled, I'm sure of it, but there will be a few conveniences and maybe the odd plot hole, but this gets offset by the incredible characters. The team really went all out to make each of them unique, without making them caricatures, at least not all of them. There are hints of Whedon-esque bantering every now and then, but it never gets too silly. Okay, the characters still are modern 30-somethings, which I guess shouldn't really be the case, given the world they've grown up in and their unfortunate fate. None of them have parents anymore, none have older siblings, many of them are afraid to have children because they would doom them to shorter and shorter lives, growing up in orphanages and seeing the world around them die. Of course people would acclimate to such an existence as well, but still, sometimes the sarcastic remarks or the quirky back and forth seems a bit out of place. One moment I wade through the corpses of previous expeditions, and the next I listen to the cynical last words of one explorer dying a very silly death.
Stop crying. You're not the one about to die. Great, and now I'm losing consciousness.
And later at camp, we joke around a bit more about stupid stuff while we are fighting for our lives. Not saying that there can't or shouldn't be humor in a story like this. I even think it's a very important component to make the tragedy hit even harder. To me, it feels like the writers just barely didn't nail the right balance. Again, it's actually not that bad. Not bad at all. It just sometimes throws me off. But aside from those instances, the characters are amazingly written. Even those you only get to see in a few scenes. Multifaceted, authentic human beings. Well, as authentic as magical science fantasy humans can be. There is some exaggeration going on with their personalities at times, but this is fairly normal in storytelling and often appreciated, since it gives the characters some extra spice. For the minor characters, there's the girl next door with whom the protagonist had an affectionate relationship, who is beloved by her community, who is always friendly and considerate, and who now forces herself to be strong in her last day on this earth. Happy that she can share this last moment with the most important person in her life. We have the best friend trying to help his buddy back on his feet. The intellectual dandy regretting having to say goodbye to an old rival. Or the cautious leader clinging onto hope. We have the mature and motherly sister desperately juggling emotions and responsibility. And we get all that from just a few little scenes. But then we have the party, with Lune, a stoic and rational woman relying heavily on code and protocol, and who only ever loosens up when she gets to geek out about history, myths and folk tales. Mayel is the protagonist's foster child, the youngest explorer with 9 good years still before her. She is a very quiet and melancholic girl and often keeps her distance, but she opens up when she's with the protagonist. They have some really great chemistry together. She's kind and always helpful towards others, and she's so well acted. She's the best played character so far in the game. Hey.
Same. I saw him. The white-haired man and this woman.
And then there's Gustav, the main character, driven by a righteous hatred towards the paintress and his desire to create a better future for those that come after. He has a strong moral code and is devoted to his friends. He is a genius engineer, knowledgeable when it comes to anything about the expedition. He is brave and gives his all to protect those near and dear to him. But he's shy when he needs to communicate his feelings. He stumbles over his own words. He often gives in under the quick-witted and snarky remarks of his, mostly female friends. He comes off a bit submissive, but I don't think that's entirely it. He's just a very agreeable person, caring or maybe worrying a lot about others' feelings, getting dragged down when things don't work out, and sometimes just needs a right kick in the ass to get back up. And get up he will, to fight on for a better future. And let's be honest, how much of a beta could he actually be, seeing how he builds himself a nice little harem over here? Someone on the development team really likes their isekai anime. The villains are mysterious and secretive. They sometimes go out of their way as to not speak forthright, to make everything appear even more convoluted. But it doesn't get too cartoonish or anime-like. Just a bit. And then there's all the silly, goofy and weird characters, with the gestrels being at the forefront. These wooden doll-like creatures that remind me a bit of Zelda's Koroks inhabit the lands of the paintress. They love fighting above all else, and they are the most dumbest idiots out there. In a world where every creature is somewhat stupid. They are walking, talking parodies, and they force some hilarity into this death-ridden world. They are the balance to the somber story, so there's no need for the expedition members to goof around. Again, not that it happens all too much. That said, the game loves to have some fun. I mean, it even says in the options that it is more fun to enable alternate outfits during cutscenes, especially when you're wearing a stereotypical French attire, with back-mounted baguettes no less. And you have to fight mimes for all those goofy outfits, so the hilarity just escalates even further. You have to best Ono Pancho with a single attack. And then there's Francois, the rabbit turtle who shouts and cusses at you, and your characters reluctantly draw their weapons against him. And then he's freaking strong. But also small things just show that this was a work of passion that people had fun creating. There's a whole secret passage just leading to a developer portrait. Stuff like this is just nice. In a way, Clair Obscur reminds me a lot of Nier. Now, these games on a whole aren't that similar. I mean, the Nier games are action games, with lots of small moments where the gameplay changes genre, like side-scrolling, shoot 'em up, or text adventure. Though, thinking about it, Clair Obscur is as much of a genre mix, it just goes about it differently. But when it comes to the melancholic presentation, the beautifully desolated world, the values of friends and enemies intermixing, the striking art design, and of course, the amazing and unique use of the soundtrack, all those elements really give me Nier vibes. And no, same as with my Stellar Blade short, I did not check who composed or performed the soundtrack, and I don't care if the same people might have been involved. It doesn't change at all how it sounds to me, and I get strong Nier vibes from it. So let's just listen to a small selection of songs, starting with the game's, I guess, main theme in the town of Lumiere. The motif used in the song will get repeated in different forms in many other pieces in the soundtrack. The music is incredibly varied and isn't afraid to hop between vastly different genres, so we also get quite a bit of electro, and also this Franco-funk, I guess would be the best way to call it. And the delightfully haunting track playing in the mansion. Yeah, I'll just leave this on for now. Very often the music is somber and makes frequent use of lyrics. It reminds me of Persona in a way, and not just with the music. At a glance, some gameplay elements could be ripped straight out of Persona 5. There's even a bonding system in the game. But yeah, just look how the combat system is presented. The stylized menu items around the characters that appear painted with just a quick brush stroke, with little paint droplets flying around. It really invokes Persona 5 style. Your active party consists of 3 characters that you can swap in and out between battles, but there's more. This game actually lets you deploy the other party members should your active party fall. So they're not just standing around watching their comrades get slaughtered, they get their own chance to turn the tides of battle. And a bigger team now actually gives you a greater chance of success. I get that not every RPG can just give you access to every party member in a single battle. It comes down to balancing and also how the game wants you to think ahead and strategize when choosing your active party. But it's nice to see something like that every once in a while. For your offensive options, you have a basic attack with each character, as well as a gun to target enemy weak points or make a handful of weak attacks against multiple enemies, or to aim at special targets. Some enemies can create catalysts for extra powerful attacks or maybe to heal themselves, and you can shoot those to prevent the enemy from using that move. One boss fight had me play a little game of Simon Says between enemy turns. And then there are those little sea mine guys. Just shoot the mine and half their health is gone. If 2 of them attack at once, you can kill them with 2 well-placed bullets. There is no ammo in the game, but each shot costs 1 of your action points, and you build them up and spend them throughout each battle. Basic attacks and defending generates action points, and skills and shots deplete them. So there's no mana management in the game. Every fight you can blast enemies with your strongest attacks, provided you have a way of generating enough action points for that. Some skills may be weaker but have special effects which restore action points under certain conditions, and there's also passive effects which affect your combat strategy. But let's hold off on that for a moment. I will come back to it in a bit. Each character can equip up to 6 skills for their combat loadout. These cover everything from combo attacks to offensive spells, healing magic or buffs. Every character has their own unique skills which allow for them to take certain roles in combat. The system offers a bit of flexibility. Not every character can be an elemental mage, but you can decide if your fencer focuses on moves that inflict a lot of damage and lower the enemy's defenses, or on protecting the party with protection buffs and a bodyguard ability. Your multi-purpose mage, whose spells cover pretty much every natural element, can also be your main healer. So there's a lot to experiment with. And every character plays differently, just a bit. It's not just that they have access to different damage types to exploit enemy weaknesses. Each of them requires different tactics. Gustav's fighting style revolves around building up overcharge for a massive finisher blow. He's the most straightforward of your party members, so far at least. Lune is a mage who receives elemental stains from casting her spells. She can accumulate up to 4 stains until they get replaced by new ones, and she automatically uses them for special effects when casting other spells. So your Wildfire deals more damage if you absorb an ice stain while casting. The healing spell doesn't cost any action points if you absorb 2 earth stains. The Chain Lighting generates a special light stain when you absorb a fire stain. And the Mayhem spell gets extremely powerful the more stains it absorbs at once. And the type also determines the kind of damage you deal. Controlling Lune in combat can get a bit complicated when you have to juggle stain accumulation and depletion and cast the spells in the right order to get the most out of the generated stains. But that's where the whole fun comes from. Mayel is all about changing fighting stances with every attack. She can be without a stance or switch into either offensive or defensive stance, which respectively raises her attack or defense value and lowers the other one. Or, when certain conditions are met, switches into virtuous stance, which immensely increases her offensive capabilities without drawbacks. Each skill not only transfers her into a different stance, it also comes with special effects dependent on Mayel's current stance. So you want to plan your skills around the enemy's behavior to make the most out of it. It's always rather unfortunate to build up a virtuous stance just to be forced to use a low damage skill that transfers you into defense stance or even stanceless. Mayel's fighting style appears quite complicated, but once you've grown accustomed to it, it becomes rather intuitive. Ciel fights with tarot cards and her skills revolve around building up potential damage in an enemy that she can then release with certain other skills. In addition, her skills accumulate sun and moon energy, and once she's collected both types, she automatically falls into a twilight trance, which allows her to stock up even more potential damage among other helpful bonuses. So you want to optimize generating sun and moon tokens so that you have a bunch of them before they get converted into twilight, maximizing the duration of your trance. While all these characters share the same basic combat actions and don't differ mechanics-wise, they play so differently from one another. Each one has their own unique combat behavior and tactics when it comes to pick out what skills to use or even equip. There is so much variety and depth to be found in this system. You don't just equip the fire ability when you enter the ice enemy area, and that's it. One swapped out ability changes your approach to all the others. Maybe follow-up moves don't work as well anymore. Maybe the new ability can be better utilized with a different setup, which might require a different party composition. If you have a bunch of skills with bonuses against marked targets, maybe you want to pair up that combatant with the one who excels at marking enemies. And the system gets even deeper and more complex, because now I'm getting to the passive effects, called Lumina, and there's a lot of them. After defeating certain enemies, you're sometimes rewarded with so-called Pictos. You can also find them through exploration or acquire them from vendors. These are equipment pieces, similar to accessories in other RPGs. They affect your stats, with higher level Pictos giving greater bonuses, but they also come each with a passive effect. And these effects can be pretty much anything. They range from boosting your attack or defense, to augment certain actions with an elemental bonus, or give a chance of inflicting negative status effects. There's one effect that gives you action points whenever you kill an enemy, one where you need to stagger an enemy, one where you need to inflict burn on an enemy, one where you're rewarded with action points for healing a teammate. There's quite a few that give extra effects when healing or reviving teammates. There's a selection of effects that boost your stats and give strong buffs, as long as the character is the only one in the active party. The possibilities are endless. You can equip up to 3 Pictos, so you might think that there isn't that much customization possible. It's more like specialization. But you see, you can master those effects and then equip them to any character regardless of what Pictos they have equipped. Mastering works similar to the ability system in Final Fantasy IX, though more streamlined. You need to win 4 battles with a Picto equipped to master its effect. It doesn't matter how hard the battle is, it doesn't matter how strong the effect is, it's always 4. That's certainly one way to go about it, and it's not really a bad decision or a worse approach than in FF9, but I personally prefer the other system, where stronger effects cost more ability points to master, and stronger enemies reward you with more ability points. So when you have a small selection of passives you want to learn and don't want to grind, you need to prioritize. Not that there isn't any of that in this game. There aren't actually that many battles in any given area, so 4 fights is actually quite a lot. And also, each Lumina requires a certain amount of Lumina points that you receive with each level up and through certain collectibles, to be equipped without the corresponding Picto. So at times you don't want to remove an already mastered Picto and learn a different one, because you don't have enough Lumina points to equip the effect. Or maybe the stat boosts of that Picto are just too useful, so you don't want to swap. You can sink a whole lot of strategy into that system, and it's so incredibly rewarding. Now, I have mentioned a few different games already. The game feels a bit like the developers just took all the great elements out of their favorite games and mixed them together, made it French, so incredibly French, and gave it a really strong hook and an enticing narrative. The turn-based party combat, party selection and the overall visual design of the HUD seems to be inspired by Persona. The atmosphere and wacky creative approach to visuals and presentation, and of course the music, could be straight out of Nier. Learning abilities from your equipment is very similar to Final Fantasy IX. This is already a bit of a video game chimera, so let's throw in some Dark Souls for good measure. Yeah, this is a Soulslike through and through. I mean, the game doesn't explain shit. Well, it does have a lot of mid-combat tutorials, but it doesn't tell you what your stats do. If you're not already familiar with the Soulspawn approach to weapon scaling, you don't know what the big letters next to your equipment actually mean. Only in a random tooltip, the game tells you that your combat consumables that are not listed within your inventory replenish at a checkpoint. It only barely describes the skill effects, not enough to fully grasp what they actually do. Why do I randomly get weapon upgrades after a battle? Yeah, it feels like Demon's Souls all over again. You also have an elixir akin to Estus, which you can upgrade via collectibles and which also replenishes on each rest. And resting also revives all enemies, though there is no loss of experience. Falling in battle just kills you and sends you back to the last checkpoint, of which there are plenty of. It seems the autosave kicks in after anything you could possibly do. Pick up a treasure, defeat a monster, activate a rest point, talk to a merchant. So yeah, dying never sends you back all too far. So it's not as brutal or punishing as an actual Souls-like. It still very much deserves the title though. This is a turn-based Souls-like because of one little thing. You can dodge and also parry enemy attacks. Oh, this is so satisfying. Enemies have very strong and noticeable attack wind-ups accompanied by an audio cue to help with the timing, so you can try to dodge to somewhat easily evade any incoming damage or go for the riskier parry move to block the attack and get a chance for an incredible powerful counter attack. For that, you need to parry each attack in the enemy's combo chain. And all the things we love and hate from Souls games are here in that regard. While early encounters are rather straightforward, with enemies often only performing single strike attacks with intuitive timing, the more you progress, the more assholish the enemies get. Delaying the attack just a tiny bit longer than is comfortable, or attacking after only a half wind-up, feinting strikes, pulling just one more attack out of their asses after you thought the combo was over, stuff like that. And in this game, you can't just dodge out of the way and keep your distance, carefully observing the enemy. Since this is a turn-based JRPG, your characters are politely standing in a line across the enemy. You only dodge for a short moment before you step back into the enemy's reach. And this sounds not actually that well thought through, but it works surprisingly well. While the timing for dodging and especially parrying is tight, it's not unreasonably so. There is some lenience, and you have plenty of opportunities to make a comeback, and even if you fail to manage, losing a battle isn't that much of a setback. And the game does a lot to make your defensive maneuvers feasible. The aforementioned audio cues, often additional visual indicators, every attack has its own little tell, and whenever the animation itself isn't that obvious, the game tells you with some on-screen text what to expect. And you know what? It always feels amazing when you nail a parry on every strike from a long or complicated combo chain and tear the enemy to shreds with a counter-attack. So yeah, the experiment was a total success. This takes the whole action command-based JRPG concept to a whole new level. I mean, there aren't that many games which do anything more creative than just hit the action button during attack and defense. Kinda like Mario RPG did all those years ago. And this spun into a whole series of games that really commit to this system in very creative ways. And there are a few other games that have you do a bit more than just picking an action and waiting for the results. But I mean, if you have me push buttons in a turn-based JRPG, at least make it interesting. Too many games go the easy way. This here goes all out. You can even jump during combat. This is why I love video games. Compelling characters in an intriguing world, a strong story hook, incredibly creative and unique ideas flawlessly executed. Well, maybe not flawless. You see, the game's lower budget? Well, no. I wanted to say that a number of issues are due to the game's smaller budget, and while there is certainly some truth to that, the bigger, kinda inconvenient truth is that these huge-ass, giant publisher-backed tens of millions or even hundreds of million-dollar games don't do a better job. Often, it's even worse. Yeah, the graphics might not be as shiny, especially when you turn off the Instagram smoosh filter, and not all the animations look that amazing. But at least I have always been an art design over graphical prowess kinda guy, and the art design in this game is amazing. It's fresh, it's unconventional, it's not afraid to play around with colors and contrast, so I can excuse the odd horrible texture or reused asset. There are some moments where the game doesn't correctly fade out when it transitions to a different scene. Sometimes some of your actions randomly confuse the engine, it's hard to recreate, but from time to time the game suddenly forgets that you can run or stop running. Terrain collision is sometimes a bit wonky, models and textures can be somewhat glitchy. One time I got stuck in the overworld and I thought it was a great idea to warp to the party campsite and return to get free, but this only gave me an autosave and brought me right back where I started. I panicked a bit at that moment. It's always great to have different save files. I got free eventually, but yeah, be careful with that. Sometimes the music suddenly cuts out, only to slowly start up again. And I'm not really sure what to think about the accessibility option to automatically succeed at the attack button prompts. I mean, it just switches off a battle mechanic. You can just turn down the difficulty if you can't consistently hit these button prompts. Though from what I can see, it doesn't give you a critical success, so I guess while using it is advantageous, you can get just slightly more out of each skill if you turn the system off and go for criticals, especially when it comes to buffs, where a critical applies the buff to the whole party. But the worst thing I encountered is actually one of the cardinal sins of game design. You see, very often during a cutscene, your characters go to places, and when you're back in control, your character already faces towards the direction you need to go. But pretty often there's stuff back where you just had been. So you need to turn around and walk back. More often than not, there's nothing in your way, and pick up all the goodies. I mean, if there's no challenge in getting those, why not handing them to me straight up? Why goad me into progressing without retrieving my reward from the previous boss fight? That's just mean. And while we're on the topic, there's just so much to collect in each area. While the levels themselves are laid out pretty linear, there are a lot of goodies and collectibles off the beaten path. Hidden nooks and crannies and all that good stuff. It's often not that easy to know which way to take. Gamer logic demands that you don't follow the right way until you explored everything else, but since you don't know which one of those many paths is the right one, you have to carefully move back and forth until you're sure you got everything. That is, I thought there was no way to know. Actually, the game uses a simple trick to show you the way forward. Just follow the light. Lanterns light your way in a kinda subtle and even poetically immersive way. Now, this isn't the case all the time, but often enough, you can just rely on the lanterns to know when you're about to move the story forward. You really need to take your time exploring or you'll miss out on so much. New pictos with useful passives, upgrade materials for your weapons, special items to strengthen your battle consumables or increase the number of uses. You can find journals of the previous expeditions to retrace the steps of those who came before you. There's a bunch of different hairstyles and outfits to unlock. You can find pieces of the soundtrack to listen to at the party camp. There are secret bosses that wreck your shit. There is so much in this game. It's remarkable. This is a game worth playing, worth supporting. This is all we need, all we want from gaming as an entertainment and, more importantly, a storytelling medium. Do yourself a favor and get this game. And with that, I'm off. I wish you an absolutely amazing day. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.